Hello, so today Colleen, Zarina, and me, Maili, will introduce you the book The Rational Animal How Evolution Made Us Smarter Than We Think, written by Ken Rake and Chris Cavicius. And the question is, what is this book about? You can see the summary. First, an introduction and biography of the authors, the motivation of this book writing and some paradox, function of this book, predictors and influence of the environment on our behavior, techniques of manipulation, and then synthesis and our opinion. Kenrick and Griscovicius challenge the prevailing view of decision making and present a new alternative grounded in evolutionary science. By connecting our modern behaviors to their ancestral roots, they reveal that underneath our seemingly foolish tendencies is an exceptionally wise system of decision making. The book explores the role evolution plays in our economic decision making and shows how rational choice can be rooted in purpose for evolutionary traits.
There are two authors. First, Douglas T. Kendrick. He was born in Queens, in New York, on 1948. His father and brother both spent several years in Sing Sing, a New York State prison, but he broke the family tradition and went to graduate school to study psychology. He became a professor of psychology at Arizona State University. He is author of over 170 scientific articles, books, and book chapters, the majority applying evolutionary ideas to human cognition and behavior. The second author is Vladas Griscovicius. He was born in the Soviet Union. As a kid, he moved to the USA when he was 10 years old. Griscovicius has published over 40 articles in the top business and psychology journals, examining sustainability, green marketing, motivation, emotion, social influence, social norms, and conspicuous consumption. He has an extensive background in psychology. He is now professor of marketing and psychology at the Carlson School of Management at the University of Minnesota.
The book is a puzzle of evolutionary perspective in the same way that Charles Darwin looks at the peacock stance. He is questioning why people do a lot of weird stuff. The main question is how our brains evolved to do those weird stuff. Regarding Darwin's theory, men could be considered as peacocks. This is one example. When men are buying a Porsche, it's not very different from the attitude of peacocks. The goal is to impress, to show fortunes. Also, female will look for the strongest male who will provide them the healthiest offspring. Is that real? Those men are acting in the same way of peacocks? Humans and animals are following the same principle of evolutionary psychology. We behave like all other species. We all want to be safe, eat, find a mate, avoid disease, be healthy, have friends, care our family. The main goal is looking at that underlying psychology and working through the difference that we see at the surface and underneath it all. Authors in the book focus on so-called rational animal or the ancestral decision makers that lives inside of modern man. Kenrick and Griscovicius propose that decision making comes from deep rationality, which is based on the successes and failures of ancestral decision making. Each chapter uses pop culture example for reinforcing the central points of examination in different kinds of irrational decisions which individuals may encounter during their life. The use of pop culture example in their relation to evolutionary themes is one of the many positive qualities of this book.
In our research, we see that the 5 first years are very critical. So the most important is what happened on those first years of life. It predicts your environment health. So what the book wanted to show is that people who live in a very predictable environment, they expect their adult life to be predictable. An example of predictable changes is the risk behavior. In fact, most risks are taken during the early 20s from a biopsychological perspective to impress the opposite sex, and then this level decreases. For example, the first chapter starts with a successful discussion of George Kennedy's irrational decision to make risky business ventures, such as bootlegging and high-stake investment, to demonstrate how irrational and risky decision can have a high payoff. Kennedy's success in industry would allow him greater access to mates and would aid in the survival of his offspring. Therefore, on an evolutionary level, this decision exemplifies deep rationality. Then I will less innovative later. Is biology determining our risk behaviors? An example is that a lot of doctors see men of 13, 14 one injection of testosterone because they need to be more confident and to take risks. So the drug choice here is testosterone. Chapter 1 begins with the mate acquisition discussion, which continues in Chapter 7, and it examines why we prefer luxury items over practical items. Also, Chapter 8 covers the sexual economics of men and women. Chapter 1 explains that males behave friskier when attractive females are close. Supporting this claim, they cite Cronin and von Hippel 2010. This research measured the testosterone levels of male skateboarders while they are doing tricks in front of attractive female experimenters. In this experiment, male skateboarders are taking more risks and achieve greater successes and failures with more difficult tricks. This experiment showed that men could have higher testosterone levels in the presence of a female experimenter. Also, it's important to precise that men weren't aware of this experiment, so they didn't behave consciously. Why does evolution drive us to certain inconsistencies in our lives? First, in economic classes, we learn that people are consistent, logical, and rational. But then, in credit school, we learn that what we actually look at people's behavior is that they are inconsistent. You act differently every day. People look like hypocrites. In a deeper logic, yes, people are inconsistent, but we're very predictably inconsistent. We can make sense of this. Following different evolutionary goals, be safe, attract a mate, care for your kids. Be rational is different than following the goals. In the 7 and 8 chapters, unconscious behavior goes from risky to acquiring resources in order to attract potential partners. It seems that men deliberately buy objects that show their wealth in order to attract the attention of potential mates. The authors discuss that women spend billions of dollars a year on makeup and clothes to look attractive to partners. Other women may not be aware of the evolutionary roots of wearing red and sexual signals. Let's talk about marketers now. Their job depends on selling people stuff and making sure that people buy it. Marketers know the importance of evolutionary goals. They try to evolve these goals. An example could be a car because the function of a car is getting from point A to point B. But other reasons could be cars can be erotic, exciting, safe, etc.
Ultimate goal of advertise is the better advertising are the ones who looks on what you want exactly. For example, writing on Google and then showing you some advertising about precise subject with the help of cookies. Is it equal to that? It's your choice to make a click and your choice to say no. Is it difficult to not be influenced? The subjects see that companies are caring about them enough to know their preferences, and they say, that's done for you, you're special. We also asking, do people have any advice on how best to make their savings? Money is relatively new information. What today is so important is we want to attract romantic partner, to be safe and eat. For example, when you are buying for someone expensive ring, the goal is only to retain stable relation. The author discussion about economic decision making and the behaviors argument about unconscious decision making does seem to be true. In chapter 6, which called Living Fast and Dying Young, Kenrick and Griscovicius used the example of economic rise and fall of musician MC Hammer. After acquiring $33 million worth of assets, he found himself in $30 million of debt 6 years later due to his extensive spending. It would seem that Hammer's irrational spending habits are rational from the evolution point of view. Hammer grew up in an environment that supposed a quick life story strategy. A fast-paced life cycle strategy is characterized by risk, impulsive, and dangerous lifestyle that can often lead to premature death. Hammer's generous expenses make sense on deeper rational level because his early developmental environment prepared him to be shorten his life expectancy.
For people who are not familiar with evolutionary psychology, this book provides an excellent overview of this discipline and makes evolution relevant to modern life. Because the rational animal is intended for a non-academic audience, the pop culture's reference may seem forced and potentially distract from the main points of the chapters. Combining our modern behavior with original roots, they show that under our seemingly silly tendencies lies an exceptionally wise decision-making system. From investing money to choosing a job, from buying a car to attract a romantic partner, our choice is determined by deep evolutionary goals. Each of us has several evolutionary goals, and this study reveals something radical. There is no one but you making decision. Although it seems that there is only one single I in your head. Your mind actually contains several different selves. Each of them directs you in a different direction when it turns to the controls. Rational animals will change your mind about decision making, and along the way you will find a close connection between ovulation strippers, Wall Street financiers, testosterone addicted skateboarders, Steve Jobs, Elvis Presley, and you. Overall, The Rational Animal would be an excellent introduction for people interested in learning about their daily behavior from an evolutionary perspective.